Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling the foundational ideas behind managing risk.
That's right. We're using the international standard ISO 31000.2019 as our guide for this.
Yep. Think of us as your instructors, maybe, helping you grasp the core of this framework, without getting too bogged down in jargon.
Exactly. We're going straight to the source material, the ISO 31000 doc itself.
And our mission today.
Well, we want to shed some light on the first four clauses. That's scope, normative references, terms and definitions, and finally principles.
Okay.
By the end of this, you should have a really solid grasp of what the standard covers, what it relies on, or actually what it doesn't rely on.
Ah, intriguing.
The essential vocabulary it uses, and the fundamental beliefs behind good risk management.
Right, the building blocks for the whole thing.
Precisely. These are crucial for understanding the whole picture.
Okay, let's jump right into our first topic then. Clause 1, the scope. What exactly does this tell us about ISO 31000?
So imagine the scope like the outline for a course, maybe.
Right.
It tells you what's going to be covered.
And what's not covered.
And just as importantly, what's not. The key thing here, I think, is just how universal ISO 31000 is meant to be.
Universal? How so?
It gives guidelines for managing any kind of risk.
Any
risk faced by any organization. Doesn't matter about size, sector, location. It's really designed to be adaptable.
So, okay, if you're managing risk for, say, a tiny nonprofit or maybe a big tech company or even a government department, these guidelines could work.
Absolutely. They could offer valuable direction for all of them. And here's a really crucial point.
Okay.
While it gives this common language, this common approach, it's not like a rigid set of rules you must follow to the letter.
Ah, that's good.
Yeah. The application, how you use these guidelines, it's meant to be customized, tailored to your specific organization, its unique situation, its context, what it's trying to achieve.
So it's more like a flexible toolkit,
Yeah.
not a strict instruction manual.
That's a great way to put it. A toolkit, not a one-size-fits-all manual.
That's good to know because, sometimes standards can feel really prescriptive, very rigid. You're saying this is more about providing a framework, a way to think about risk.
Exactly that. It's about establishing a way of thinking and a set of principles to guide that thinking.
Okay.
And the scope also clarifies that these guidelines are relevant right through the whole life of an organization.
From start to finish.
From start to finish.
Okay.
And you can apply them to any activity, including, importantly, how decisions get made at all levels. It's not just for, the risk department.
Right. And is it specific to certain types of risk, like financial or safety or environmental?
Nope. It explicitly says it's not specific to any particular industry or sector or risk type.
Okay.
That broad applicability, that's really a defining feature of ISO 31000. Makes it relevant across a huge range of things people do.
All right. That definitely gives us a clear picture of what this standard is aiming to cover. Let's move to our next topic. Clause 2, normative references.
What are these, generally? And what are they for ISO 31000?
Okay, so think of normative references in a standard, like the required reading list on a syllabus.
Okay, makes sense.
There are other documents that are explicitly mentioned, and they're considered, essential, indispensable, really, for properly understanding and applying the standard you're looking at.
Okay, so what other standards does ISO 31000 tell us we absolutely have to get hold of to use it properly?
Well, here's the surprisingly simple answer.
Oh.
None.
None, really?
Yep. Clause 2 of ISO 31000.2018 states very clearly, there are no normative references in this document. Full stop.
Wow. Okay, so unlike some other frameworks maybe that kind of rely on a whole web of other documents all linked together,
Okay.
this one just stands on its own 2 feet.
Precisely. It's self-contained in that sense.
And for you, the listener, what does that mean practically?
It means a significant simplification, really. You don't need to go hunting for a list of other mandatory standards just to understand or start implementing the basic ideas of ISO 31000. That is remarkably straightforward. Okay, good. So, next topic, Clause 3, terms and definitions. This sounds like where we get into the nitty-gritty of the language. Why is having a whole section just for definitions so important?
Oh, this section is absolutely foundational.
Yeah.
Foundational. Imagine trying to, discuss quantum physics if everyone had a different idea of what atom or energy meant.
Right, chaos.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Clause 3 establishes a common language, a shared vocabulary for talking about risk management.
Okay.
When everyone in an organization, or even across different organizations using the standard, uses the same definitions for the key terms. It just makes everything clearer. Communication, thinking, the effectiveness of the whole effort.
It ensures everyone's singing from the same hymn sheet, basically.
That's a perfect analogy, singing from the same hymn sheet, building that shared understanding right from the start.
Okay.
And the standard also points you towards wider resources if you need them. It mentions the ISO online browsing platform and the IEC Electropedia.
Ah, online databases.
Yeah, they're databases of terms used across lots of different standards. So
Yeah.
if you bump into a term elsewhere and want the official definition, they're useful.
Mm.
But for ISO 31000 itself, Clause 3 gives us the essential glossary we need right now.
Got it. Okay, let's start unpacking some of these core definitions then. First one, maybe the most important, risk, 3.1. It's defined as the effect of uncertainty on objectives. That sounds pretty concise.
It is concise, but there's a lot packed in there. Let's break it down.
Okay, effect. What does that mean here?
So the note clarifies that effect is a deviation from what you expect.
A deviation.
Yeah. And crucially, this deviation isn't automatically negative. It can be positive, negative, or actually both at the same time.
Positive too, so opportunities.
Exactly. Think of potential opportunities as, well, positive effects coming from uncertainty.
Oh.
And threats are the negative effects.
Mhm.
So risk isn't just about stopping bad things happening.
Right, it also covers the possibility of good things, unexpected good things happening because of that uncertainty.
Precisely. Like a new technology pops up that's uncertainty, but it could have a really positive effect, an opportunity for innovation.
Okay, and just as easily, a sudden market crash would be a negative effect, a threat.
Right.
What about the uncertainty part?
Uncertainty is just that state of, well, not having complete knowledge, not being able to perfectly predict an outcome or event. It's that inherent unpredictability that exists in, well, pretty much everything an organization does.
Makes sense. And objectives. Seems obvious, but I bet there's some detail there.
There is. Objectives can be really diverse. They can relate to all sorts of things. Financial goals, operational targets, strategic aims, maybe compliance needs.
All kinds of goals.
Yeah, all kinds. And importantly, these objectives exist at different levels in an organization. You've got the big overarching mission, but also specific team goals, project goals.
Right down to the details. And there's a note, note 3, attached to risk. It says risk is often expressed in terms of risk sources, potential events, consequences, and likelihood. Can you just briefly touch on what those mean?
Sure. So a risk source is basically anything that has the potential to create a risk.
Okay.
Potential event is a specific thing that could happen, an occurrence or a change.
Right.
The consequences are, well, the potential outcomes if that event does happen, affecting those objectives we talked about.
And likelihood.
Likelihood is just the chance, the probability of that event actually happening. And we'll actually hit the formal definitions for all of these as we go through Clause 3.
Okay, cool. That gives us a really good handle on risk. Next up is risk management, 3.2. Defined as coordinated activities to direct and control an organization with regard to risk. What's key here?
The emphasis, I think, is on coordinated activities, and that phrase, direct and control.
Okay.
It highlights that risk management isn't supposed to be random or, just reacting when something bad happens.
It needs structure.
It needs structure, yeah. An organized, ongoing effort to guide the organization in how it finds risks, assesses them, treats them, monitors them. It's about being proactive, having systems in place to handle that uncertainty.
Okay, proactive and coordinated. Got it. Now, stakeholder, 3.3. Defined as a person or organization that can be affected by, or perceive themselves to be affected by a decision or activity.
Wow, that sounds really broad.
It is. It's
Thanks,
deliberately broad. It's meant to capture anyone who has an interest, basically, direct or indirect.
Anyone with a stake in it.
Exactly. The note even suggests interested party as another term. Think about employees, customers, suppliers, regulators, shareholders, even the local community where a company operates.
So really wide.
Yeah. If a decision or an activity could impact them, or even if they think it could impact them, they're a stakeholder.
Even if they just perceive they might be affected. Yes. That perception part is important. It makes them a stakeholder. And this broad view, it's crucial for good risk management because considering all those different perspectives gives you a much richer, more complete picture of potential risks and opportunities.
So say a community group worried about a new factory development, even before all the facts are out. They're definitely stakeholders under this definition.
Precisely. Their perception matters.
Yeah.
It underlines why communication and engagement are so vital in risk management.
Okay, next definition. Risk source, 3.4. An element which alone or in combination has the potential to give rise to risk. Can you give us some simple examples? What's a risk source?
Sure. Think about Things like maybe outdated equipment or a really volatile market, lack of trained staff, a poorly designed internal process, even just a shift in what customers want.
All sorts of things.
Yeah, these are all elements that, either by themselves or maybe interacting with other things could trigger risks.
Got it. Moving on to event 3.5,
Hmm.
an occurrence or change of a particular set of circumstances. The notes here seem quite important again.
They are, yeah. Note 1 points out that a single event, say a data breach, it can happen multiple times.
Right.
It can have various causes like different security holes, and it can lead to a whole range of consequences, fines, reputation damage, losing customer trust, and so on.
Okay, one event, many facets.
Exactly. And note 2 is interesting too. It broadens our thinking. It says an event includes unexpected things that do happen, but also expected things that don't happen.
Ah, like a project milestone being missed.
Exactly. A planned product launch getting delayed.
Right.
That's an event in this sense, and it has its own
So
consequences.
that's a really helpful distinction. And note 3 says an event can itself be a risk source. How does that work?
Okay, so imagine a key machine breaks down. That's the event.
Right.
That failure, that event, then becomes a risk source for other potential problems. Production delays, higher costs, maybe even safety issues.
Ah, okay. So the outcome of one risk event can actually trigger new risks down the line.
You got it. It can cascade.
Okay, building up this vocabulary. Next is consequence, 3.6, the outcome of an event affecting objectives. The notes talk about consequences being certain or uncertain, positive or negative, direct or indirect.
Exactly. So the impact of an event, it might be immediate and obvious, that's direct and certain. Or it could unfold over time, maybe less obviously, ripple effects, that's indirect and uncertain.
Okay.
And like we said with risk, consequences aren't always bad. Sometimes an event can lead to unexpected benefits, positive outcomes.
Right. And note 3 mentions cascading and cumulative effects.
Yeah, that's crucial too. A seemingly small event at the start could trigger a chain reaction.
Like dominoes.
Exactly like dominoes, leading to much bigger, more widespread consequences. Think of a tiny software bug that eventually crashes an entire network.
That ripple effect growing into a wave. Okay. Now, likelihood, 3.7.
Yeah,
The chance of something happening. The notes seem pretty key here for clarifying what likelihood means in this context.
yes, absolutely. In risk management, likelihood is used really broadly. It just means the chance of something happening, whether you've calculated that chance using precise statistics or it's more of a qualitative judgment.
So not just strict mathematical probability.
Right. Note 1 says it covers both objective-like, data-driven assessments and subjective expert opinions, maybe.
Yep.
And it can be quantitative, using numbers, or qualitative, using descriptions like high, medium, low.
Okay.
And Note 2 specifically tackles a potential language issue in English. Sometimes people think probability only means the strict mathematical thing.
Ah,
So ISO 31000 uses likelihood intentionally more broadly, kind of like how probability is often used in other languages to just mean the general sense of how likely something is.
got it. So it's about the general chance, whether you have hard numbers or just a good hunch based on experience.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay, last one in clause 3. Control, 3.8. A measure that maintains and/or modifies risk. What kind of measures are we talking about?
Note 1 gives a good list. Processes, policies, procedures, physical devices, practices, working conditions, specific actions people take.
A wide range.
Basically, a control is anything an organization puts in place to try and either reduce the chance of a bad risk happening or lessen the impact if it does, or, on the flip side, to increase the chance and positive consequences of an opportunity. Controls work on both threats and opportunities.
Okay. But there's a warning in note 2.
Yes, and it's a critical reminder. Controls aren't always perfect. They're not foolproof.
They might not work as planned.
Exactly. They might not always function as intended or achieve the effect you wanted. They can have limitations. People can find ways around them.
So putting in new security software that's a control against, it doesn't guarantee you won't get hacked, but it aims to make it less likely or less damaging if you do.
That's a perfect example. It modifies the risk, hopefully reduces it, but doesn't necessarily eliminate it entirely.
Okay, wow. That was a really thorough tour through the key terms. Let's move on to our final topic for this session. Clause 4, principles. This section lays out the sort of core beliefs for effective risk management.
Exactly. These principles are the foundation. They provide the basic guidance on what good, sound, effective risk management looks like. They tell us its fundamental value and explain its main goal, which, the standard says, is the creation and protection of value. Ultimately, good risk management helps organizations perform better, it encourages innovation, and it supports achieving those objectives we talked about.
Creating and protecting value. Okay, the first principle is A, integrated. What does that mean for risk management to be integrated?
Integration means risk management shouldn't be some separate thing happening off in a corner,
Not just a department.
not just a department, not a function that's just kind of bolted onto everything else.
Mhm.
Instead, it needs to be, well, woven into the very fabric of all the organization's activities.
So it's part of everyday business.
It should be part of how decisions get made, part of how work gets done at every level, across every function. Integration makes risk thinking proactive, not an afterthought.
Okay. Principle, structured and comprehensive. This emphasizes needing a systematic approach. Why is that so important?
Well, a structured and comprehensive approach just ensures that risk management is done consistently, reliably, and repeatably.
Okay.
This means you can actually compare risks meaningfully across different parts of the organization or track how they change over time. It stops things being fragmented or purely reactive.
Yeah.
You get consistent, comparable results.
Makes sense. Principle C, customized. This sounds like what we discussed earlier with the scope, right? Tailoring the approach.
Precisely. It echoes that point. The organization's risk management framework, the processes it uses, they must be specifically designed and adapted
To fit.
to fit its unique situation, its external environment, its internal culture, its specific objectives. What works for a huge global company probably won't be right for a small local charity.
It has to be tailored and proportionate.
Tailored and proportionate, exactly.
Okay. Principle D, inclusive. This brings us back to stakeholders again.
Yes. This principle really emphasizes the value you get from engaging with stakeholders, doing it at the right time in the right way.
Why?
Because by considering their knowledge, their views, their perceptions, the organization gets a much more complete picture of the risks. It leads to better awareness and more informed, effective risk management decisions. Inclusivity just leads to better outcomes.
Right. Principle E, dynamic. This acknowledges that things change, risks change.
Absolutely. Risks aren't static.
Yeah.
They pop up, they change, they might get more severe or less severe, they might even disappear completely as the world inside and outside the organization shifts.
So risk management can't be static either.
Exactly. It has to be dynamic, iterative. It needs to be able to anticipate changes, detect them, acknowledge them, and respond to them quickly and effectively.
Okay. Principle, best available information. Sounds straightforward, but what's the core idea?
Well, it might seem obvious, but it's crucial. Decisions related to risk should be based on the best information you can get your hands on.
What kind of info?
Could be historical data, current trends, forecasts about the future. But importantly, the principle also accepts that all information has limits. There's always some uncertainty.
Okay.
And crucially, it also stresses that this information needs to be timely, clear, and available to the people who actually need it to make those risk-related decisions.
Timely, clear, and accessible. Got it. Principle G, human and cultural factors. This reminds us it's not just about charts and processes.
Absolutely not. Human behavior, the organization's culture, even individual biases. They all play a huge role
In what way?
in how risks are perceived, how they're assessed, how they're managed, right across the board. Things like how much risk people are comfortable taking, the risk appetite, how people communicate, levels of trust, ethical values, they all massively impact how effective risk management could be.
People are key. Okay. And finally, Principle H, continual improvement. Risk management isn't a one-off project.
Exactly. It's an ongoing journey, not a destination you arrive at.
Mm-hmm.
The way an organization manages risk should be constantly looked at, evaluated. You learn from experience.
From successes and failures.
From both, yes. And from new knowledge, new best practices that emerge. It's meant to be an iterative cycle. Implement, monitor, review, and then enhance. Always improving.
Okay. So as we kind of wrap up this initial deep dive into these first 4 clauses, we've seen ISO 31000 offers this broad, adaptable framework for managing any risk in any organization. It surprisingly stands alone, no required extra reading. It sets up a vital common language.
Really important, that language.
And it's guided by these core principles that stress being integrated, systematic, customized, inclusive, dynamic, using good info, considering people, and always improving.
That's a fantastic summary.
Yeah.
And understanding these fundamental bits really equips you, the listener, with a solid base, a foundation for navigating the more detailed parts of risk management that come later in the standard.
And maybe as you, listening, think about what we've discussed, it's worth considering how risk is handled in your own world, whether that's personal life or work.
Yeah.
Which of these principles kind of jumps out at you? Which one resonates most with the challenges you might be facing right now?
That's a good reflection point.
Yeah, like, are there opportunities maybe to integrate risk thinking more into your activities? Or perhaps be more inclusive, bring in more perspectives when looking at risks?
Those are definitely key questions to mull over. We really hope this gives you a clearer understanding of the scope, the language, and the principles, and we encourage you to explore the rest of ISO 31000 with this foundation now in place.